the SM Media Podcast Network. Hi folks, and welcome to this episode of the Rangers Assessment right here on SM Media, your SM Media podcast for all things Rangers. I'm Scott McPike. It is always a pleasure to be your host as always. And it's going to say end of season review. It's probably not going to be much of that because I don't think we're going to talk about 2024-25 in much glorification for the rest of eternity, but we will touch on it a wee bit. It's probably more looking towards the future, obviously. I was hoping that the takeover would be announced before we did this pod, and I've kept it back to allow that. It was announced, obviously, during the week. We'll get into that in a second. To join me to discuss all things Rangers at the moment, it's always a pleasure to be joined by Scott Young.
Yeah, I feel like this is kind of a therapy session to go over the previous last 9 months of our lives watching Rangers, but no, I look forward to it.
We won't be going too much in. We won't be doing every game over the past 9 months because I think we will need a therapy session ourselves after that. Well, and to join me is always a pleasure to welcome from every other Saturday podcast, Jack Hamilton.
Aye, cheers for having us on. About the same as Scott. Look back at the season that was and look forward to hopefully some more brighter times for next season.
Scott, 2024-25, there was not a lot to be positive about. It didn't start well. It started with quite a rubbish summer where it felt more about reducing the wage bill and ended up kind of not starting great because results didn't go greatly. Nothing really kind of. Europe was obviously probably one of the bright spots. Probably should have won the League Cup. Again, we can argue, was it a referee? Was it other things that made that happen? But league never really felt realistic this season. And then Clement is sacked. Barry Ferguson comes in, does steady the ship to a degree. But I think from just after Christmas, I think if you'd said to everybody connected with Rangers just end the season now, I think they would have taken it and got to exactly where we are now, the 1st of June, and looked towards a brighter start.
Yeah, it was when that Keith Jackson report, the takeover came out, but middle of January, roughly was when we first heard of
Yeah, I
it.
would say so. It was after Christmas, yeah.
Aye, when that came out, everyone kind of collectively went, "Can we just fast forward to that now?" Because it came out and there was like, "Yes, takeover," and then it said May June time, and everyone went, "Can we just fast forward to May June?" The season started with as soon as I heard the first 5 home games are going to be at Hampden at the start
Yeah,
of the season,
that's
that was
well,
when I
yeah.
realised this is not going to be a good season. As soon as I heard that, Ibrox, they made an arse of the Copeland and everything else in between. I kind of knew for a fact this season's not going to end well.
Jack, I think obviously Scott touches on something I forgot completely about was with the Hampden debacle, but it did just represent what's kind of been wrong with Rangers for a few years is just that everything that seems to be either thought out just hasn't went to plan, and those days feel like they have come to an end.
Yeah, I think going back to just the start of last season, the summer was very, very negative, as you say, looking to kind of reduce players' wages and get high earners away, get anybody
Having
possible
a
out of the club.
manager a 4-year deal as well.
Yep, and we obviously done that, which wasn't great. And then starting the season at Hampden, even starting the season at Tynecastle, a 0-0 draw, flat game. A team that I think Scott Wright and Ben Davies were in that first game of the season. So we were really unprepared going into last season. Even with the Champions League stuff as well, you hope that the new owners maybe take that into their periphery and actually start building for that, and have been building for that in the background, because that's obviously coming up really soon. In the past few years, we've not been ready for it. So, thankful that last season is now away, and we can look forward to new ownership, new manager, new team, and hopefully new optimism.
Scott, Friday was announced, obviously, the takeover, the long-awaited takeover has been confirmed. The 49ers enterprises have bought a majority stake in Rangers. Obviously, that means that previous board members have moved on. A lot of board members would tell you publicly and privately that they were getting a bit fatigued, and I think it showed with the lack of the lack of progression, the constant kind of backward steps. Whether they certainly weren't deliberate. It just felt as if everything they touched at certain points just completely went to dust. Like Hampden being an example of that. Like as we said, just like really bad regression in terms of on the field, and now we're at a stage where we've got a new structure. We've got obviously Andrew Kavanagh seems to be the kind of main man in terms of certainly the kind of public figurehead. He's obviously been announced as chairman. Parag Marathi was obviously been announced as vice chairman. He is very involved with Leeds, as we know. New, obviously, board members Andrew Clayton, Gene Schnur, and Mark Tabor. I apologise for any mispronunciation, but just go with me here. And like the obviously Graham Park leaving the board, Alistair Johnson and Julian Woltart will be leaving. Interestingly, though, Fraser Thornton stays on, obviously previously chairman. I'd imagine being kept in to help with the transition in a way. I'd imagine he would have been somebody maybe the board would want to have kept, I would imagine. So George Taylor stays on and John Halstead. So looks to be a complete new start. Patrick Stewart obviously remains as chief executive officer. Thurwell obviously comes in today. Actually, his first day in the job is tomorrow as it stands, as chief operating officer. And we'll get into Neil Scoppin and obviously that transition in a minute. But for the first time, I would say in my kind of lifetime, certainly since the 21st century, not only does it feel now that there's a financial stability at the club, but it seems like there's a modern approach at the club, and that to me, it just feels like the beginning of a new era.
Yeah, new era. I think you'll hear. I think we talk about the ownership. The word new era will come up a lot in this podcast and just in Rangers in general. But also, I think until maybe first pre-season friendly or first league game, it doesn't feel like it's happened yet. Until I see something on the park, whether that's someone in the dugout, new players X Y Z, it won't feel like it's real. If you get me, because obviously the last board it was a bit toxic. Team was crap. That didn't help anything else either. So I feel like with the new ownership in, I feel like it doesn't feel, as I said, it doesn't feel real until we see something on the park.
And Jack, I think that's interesting as well. Like the new board aren't going to come in and instantly everything's going to be 100%. They are going to get things wrong. They are going to do some things that maybe the fans aren't going to appreciate. But I do feel there is a long term vision. I felt for a long time, certainly probably since Dave King left and kind of Gerrard left not long after him, it just felt as if Rangers were just kind of limping forward and getting things wrong. And when that happens, as we kind of said off air, there would have been absolutely no excitement again this summer if the previous board were there. And we do have to obviously put on recognition that a lot of these the previous board members, if they didn't invest, Rangers would probably not be in the position in any sort of position. Do you know what I mean? Like they did put a lot of money in. They've probably been well compensated for that, and they do deserve a lot of gratitude. But it did get to the point where once the takeover was mentioned and then it began to gather some steam, it felt like right, this is the right step towards a real progression.
Yeah, I think that's what Rangers fans have been desperate for a while. I think you see teams that are equally as big as Rangers across Europe. They're adopting kind of the modern transition of being a football club, and the people that they bring into the club, the way they're run, even to the way the staff looks in the dugout, to a degree as well. So I think we're actually moving towards something that the way football is going as well. We're going in a modern kind of trajectory, which is obviously a good sign. It's something that will be fresh for everybody at Rangers. I think the fans have been lapping up, of course, since the reports broke earlier on this year, kind of just desperately waiting for any kind of soundbite, anything to come out for the media to see when it was going to be done. And thankfully, as of like last week there, it's been all said and done. So I've got definite optimism. I think even looking at the way that Parag Marathi's kind of ran Leeds, where he's had to get rid of like your Somervilles and guys like that who were like top performers to get the cash in, to maybe then go and get that profit and build a team that will get them out the championship at their second attempt. So I think they look like they run football clubs well. I think Rangers is quite similar to Leeds in a way where they've been underachieving for so long for the size of the club. So hopefully they can come in and put all the building blocks in place. And as you say, it's not going to be instant. We're not just going to be spending tens of millions of pounds on players and they win another. And it's going to be something that we'll be transitioning to, and hopefully as instant. But I'm definitely excited for the ride ahead.
One person who's not going to be part of the new Rangers Revolution, as announced on Sunday of today as we're recording this, is Nils Coppin, obviously previously head of recruitment and then promoted to technical director. Scott, it always felt to me like with Nils Coppin, he seemed to be Philip Clement's guy, and in a way, like I always felt he was brought in. There was talk of a connection. I think at Genk, if I remember, he was I don't even think he was chief scout at PSV. I think he was a scout in some capacity. Whether he was head of the department, I don't know. But I think with Nils Coppin, there was definitely to a degree, a modern approach. But I think the one thing I've kind of come to the conclusion today was if he had done well in his job, I don't think they're parting company with him. So it says to me it's a complete clean break, or Coppin hadn't been delivering in the ways he was kind of asked to.
To me, just looking from the outside perspective, it looks to be the latter. Purely, I'll look at three decisions he made in that last summer window. £3 million on Robin Proper, £4 million on Bramy, and putting an obligation clause in Oscar Cortez's loan deal
See the thing
after
with
he went
Cortez. See the
that
thing
went
with
in.
Cortez. Sorry, and I know I'm interrupting you, but see at the time, see last season, see at the start of last season, we were not all happy about the Cortez thing. I think the Cortez thing's been more a bad luck thing, where it's obviously another thing in terms of like the injury record, which we speak a lot. I get
Yeah,
absolutely mesmerised at how bad Rangers' injury record is. It can't just be accidental. But if you'd said to a lot of Rangers fans, Oscar Cortez in the summer for 4.5 million next season, if he stays fit, I think a lot of them would have been happy. I get the problem by Rami thing, and we can talk about that. But is the Cortez thing not just a luck situation?
I wouldn't. If you're looking at it that way, I would change the word of obligation to option.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have made it an obligation to buy. I think making an obligation to buy for someone who played 3 games then get injured last season. I was happy we got Cortez back because I liked
Yeah.
the glimpses we saw of him last season. And even some of the stuff this season, the glimpses he played on the bar, he hasn't been horrific. But I wouldn't have made it an obligation, and I think Coppin has to take the blame for that. I think obligation to buy are very. I don't understand them. You look at top level, Jadon Sancho, for example. Chelsea need to pay to get out of their obligation to buy because he's not been great. I don't understand obligation to buys in general.
Mm-hmm.
I'd much rather go an option. And I think with Cortez, if you put an option in, most Rangers fans would be absolutely fine with it. But it looks to be his injury record isn't great, which kind of sums up Rangers, to be fair. And go back to Coppin, like as a whole, I just, as you said, I do think what he is a Philip Clement guy. Like I know, like their wives are still like best pals,
Right.
Coppin and Clement's wives. So I think I was a Clement guy. So I'm not actually that shocked. I was shocked at first when I read it today, but the more I've thought about it throughout between reading it now and on this podcast, it does make sense that he's aware it's a fresh break in the scout department.
Jack Scott brings up obviously like Robin Proper and Bayrami, two signings that clearly, like for different reasons, certainly with Proper hasn't worked out. But there is like looking at the Igaman deal, for example, Jeffy being another one. Their value will have went up significantly, but I think the issue has been they weren't. I don't think you'd say if you'd said at the start of the season last year, Jeffy and Igaman would be playing 40, 50 games. Like that kind of sums it up. But I think as well, like any sort of recruitment, there's good and there's bad, but I don't think there was certainly not enough, or they wouldn't have let him go. I just don't think the body of work was there to be like, right, this guy is absolutely essential to the running of Rangers, and the board clearly, well, the new owners and Kevin Thelwell have obviously felt, right, we want our own guy in, and that guy looks to be Dan Purdy.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, especially for the amount of turnover and change. If Niels Coppin was there, still operating under the same maybe beliefs as the previous guys going into this summer, I think it makes sense just to kind of get your new guy in. Probably your own guy that he's already worked at Everton with Kevin Thelwell, so there's that progression. But I think Niels Coppin as well, with the board kind of just promoting him to that figure. Can't even remember the technical director or something like that, but like an in-house promotion as well didn't do him too much because
Everybody
it
at
just
the time felt that was ridiculous as well.
it was just like he's here, just give him the promotion kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think Niels Coppin's always had people maybe up against him for that, but I think it's been a bit of a mixed bag for me when I look at some of the players that he signed. I believe he signed Diomande as well. I could be wrong on that.
Yeah.
Don't know if you've seen it at that time, but
I think so. Yeah.
Well, Diomande was an obligation to buy as well.
Yeah. Aye, so Diomande's he's turned out pretty well. Of course, I think Yefty, Igaman have been smart signings, and there have been signings in the ballpark where obviously we were operating in last summer, looking for that possible potential sell-ons that those players might bring in the future. So I think he's done well with a couple of them. Even the Cherny loan deal ended up being a good one in the end, but there is a few sprinkled through there, like the Bajramis and the Proppers, where we spent significant cash on players that should be contributing a lot more that never did. And Oscar Cortez is always going to be one of these guys that's going to get the flack for it. I think there's a bit of both on that. If we didn't sign him, there would be the fan outrage. Oh, this guy was good. Why didn't we go and do the deal? Niels Coppin can't really win if he done either thing, but I definitely think an option to buy for that would have been much more beneficial than, right, we're going to be paying for this guy. But I think it's a bit of a mixed bag for me with Niels Coppin. I'm not too fussed that he's leaving. Hopefully the next guy that comes in has got that track record, and I've seen some of the signings and profits that Everton made during his time there. So it looks decent. Obviously be working under a wee bit of a smaller budget here. So yeah, we'll definitely see where it takes us.
And there's a little bit as well, like, in terms of some, like, I think a lot of fans, and I would include myself in that, and I would imagine you both know me well enough to know that the past few years Rangers recruitment policy has been pretty ridiculous, to be honest. It's been either let's bring in this injured player who we can really get right, or let's get this guy in the Championship who's maybe down in his luck, maybe out of form, and we can get him going, like a Todd Cantwell, like a Kieran Dowell. And that's fine. That's an approach that works. But to me, it's not worked. And the kind of difference, like, one thing I will say about Cop and Scott is we were screaming out for, right, let's go young. The player trading model has to be you bring in young and sell for a profit. Certainly looking at your own country, barring, I think there's a lot to learn, but I think there's early signs look pretty good. Lyle Cameron will fit that bill as well. Like Agaman, the big chat last summer was if Rangers didn't get him in then, they would never get him. So that is an automatic. Like we've seen, there's certainly a lot to come there. Jeffy, there's a bit, I'm not massively keen on him defensively, but he's certainly got potential to improve. There's a good kind of direction. The kind of direction of recruitment is improved. But I just feel these new guys, just the way they kind of deal in the modern situation with the way football recruitment is went, I think this is a far better, far more exciting, I think is the best word for it. I think there'll be far more of a, right, we'll get into the manager in a minute, but let's fit the players to the manager system. Let's not just get the players in and we'll work out the rest later. Sort of, right, Michael Beale coming in and going, right, I want him. I'm going to play a diamond with two up front. Doesn't work against Killing, you never play it again, and then you've just get this jigsaw that's out of place. That's not going to happen now. It can't happen now because these guys know what they're doing.
Yeah, I think signing players has to be massive this summer, but also I think that Coppin would have been in charge of the sales last season.
Yeah.
Like I think we only got I think it came out in the finances we got 800k all in on selling Todd Catwell, Connor Goldson, Scott Wright, and a bunch of other players I can't remember.
Sam Lammers was
Eight.
in there.
Sam Lammers, aye. Sam Lammers was the main one because we thought we were getting millions for him.
Hmm.
But aye, so it's 800k we got for selling all those big players that we could have got big money for a few years ago. Like that sums it up. We've missed out on so much money in the last, go back to 10, maybe 8, 10 year. Kent, Morelos, Barisic, Aribo. The only one we've sold at its peak is Calvin Bassey. It's peak value. Apart from him, everyone else we either let go on a free or last year the deal, and we get pennies for them. So that needs to be fixed, and I think we'll get into this summer. But I think that starts with Nicholas Raskin
Yeah, we'll
this summer.
save him for a minute because I did want to bring up a few players who I think were quite positive over the season, but some players who maybe we might see next season in a different way. Before we get into new manager, Jack, I did want to just bring up quickly about, as Scott says, the real difference in recruitment, because I never felt this season that the squad was anywhere close to being complete. And the big reason for that, I've always felt, certainly in the past few years, is it's fine saying, right, you have two players for every position, but if half of them are not fit, that's been a systematic problem. That's people have said for years Rangers are badly unlucky with injuries. It can't be bad luck, because the perfect example of that was the Aberdeen game, the end of last season, where, if you remember, Barry Ferguson just completely changed the team and brought, I think he made 10 changes, am I right? I think the only one that played was maybe Popper.
Yeah.
I can't
It was in
remember.
between the Bilbao games, I think.
Aye, that's right. And Rafa Fernandez was obviously brought in from Lille. Now, I'm not saying Rafa Fernandez is Fabio Cannavaro, I'm not saying that at all, but first 10, 15 minutes of that game, I thought Fernandez looks quite decent. He looks tidy in the ball. He looks as if he's like quite kind of no-nonsense defender. Then he pulls up injured and you don't see him again. And how often have we been, right, I like the way that the early stages of this, I like the structure, I like the formation, and then within 15 minutes a player goes off injured. And you're having to rotate everything and it just looks muddled up. And to me, and I remember saying this exactly the same time last season, fixing the medical department, fixing the way players either recover from injuries or like how like their timetable for recovery or rehabilitation, whatever it is, that to me is as big an issue as anything that these guys need to fix, because that you can't have a title winning squad or a team competing in all fronts if you can't have half your players fit.
Yep. I think even if you look at the last 3 seasons, maybe there was points of the season where we didn't have a centre half really to play. Yeah. We didn't have a midfielder. Dujon Sterling ended
James
up becoming
Sands
a midfielder.
And John Lundstrom in Napoli, like things like that.
Like it's been constant for a good few years now, and I really I would love to kind of hear what the talks were like for going into this summer. What were they actually building a squad for? They definitely weren't building it to compete with Celtic anyway, because there wasn't enough there quality wise to, as you say, we've got injuries left, right and centre for the past few years. You need to get more players in. It's always difficult to keep all those players happy, but I mean, I even look at Cherny. If Cherny gets injured last season, we're now relying on McCausland, and that's not good enough.
Right.
Aye, McCausland. I still think about that Aberdeen game when you briefly mentioned it there, where he had a
Danilo
game.
a good example as well, right? And again, I've probably not seen enough to go, right, Danilo is absolutely essential to a rebuild, but there's been glimpses at the Hibs game, the last game of the season, Hibs away. I thought at times he was brilliant, but you also can't go, right, we're long-term planning with Danilo up front because he's been here 2 seasons and he's hardly been fit.
Yeah. Like, and that's the thing with a lot of these players. It's like Danilo, if people are desperate for him, obviously get the opportunity, he gets the opportunity, he scores a couple of goals, he gets injured, and it's back to the start again. And yeah, I just don't understand really what Rangers were going for last season in terms of the squad that they've built. It was a poor window, of course. It was more, as we say, based on players going out. The players that we get in necessarily, about half of them weren't great. So I think even with Rafa Fernandez as well, if Clinton Ciala hadn't came through into the first team, he would have probably got more games.
And he was a B team player, like, do you know what I mean? Like, he was not meant to be playing first team. Like,
just signed him at the wrong time, and it's unfortunate. Mistakes get made all the time, but Rangers just definitely do make too many for a modern operating football club. So hopefully, again, that changes going into this summer. Players will be sold at their valuations at the moment. You've got a couple of good assets in that squad, and I believe probably at the moment anybody is up for sale if the right price is made. So, it's definitely exciting to see that way. Of course, you don't want to see your favourites go, but it's the way we have to function now.
And all that will be pretty much on on hold until we know who is going to be in the dugout, because we do not know yet. And I would say we're pretty close to getting that answer. This is more kind of ups and downs in a roller coaster, hasn't it? I mean, it's been one name one day, one name the next day. Like even yesterday, there was I had heard I think we'd all seen Russell Martin was odds on. It's changed today. Scott, it just felt like when Clement was sacked, I think the right thing to do was bringing in a temporary appointment like Barry Ferguson,
Aye.
just to get that level of balance, because there's no way that Rangers were looking for a full-time manager at that point, because it wasn't let's wait until these new guys come in and they can make the decision. But from then it's been who's going to be the manager in the summer. And I still don't know. I've got my suspicions who it'll be, as we'll get into, but at the moment it's been a really bizarre managerial kind of like usually you get a name early and you'll go with it, and then like a name like David Ancelotti comes out of left field that seems too weird to be true. But I think a lot of people are now kind of at the fact that if it's not Ancelotti, they won't be happy.
Yeah, I feel like well, it's Rangers fans. They're going to be happy. We can appoint Pep tomorrow, and they're not going to be happy. So I feel like someone's gonna complain about something when it comes to Rangers Football Club. But yeah, like I feel like the owners, the American owners, have had. I feel that they could have appointed someone. They could have, because I think there was rumours going about that the Americans sort of greenlit the sacking of Flip Clement and the hiring of Barry Ferguson.
Mm-hmm.
So they must have had some sort of. Apparently they had some sort of say in that. So I don't see why they couldn't have had their name ready to get the job. Let's say Friday you announce the manager. So Friday you announce the owner. Saturday you announce the manager, or announce them both at the same time. But it has like there's not really been any. Ancelotti's on the real concrete link we've had from reliable sources.
And
Gerrard's names came up.
that's been coming from the like that's none of this has been coming from the club. It's been coming from
No,
other like the parties involved. Like a lot of the Ancelotti stuff seems to be coming from Spain. Like
yeah,
Gerrard, a lot of it seemed to be coming from his kind of like the usual people. When Gerrard was manager, you would hear from like we won't hear anything from the club until it's absolutely official, in my opinion.
no, which yeah, I don't think we will, but you guys like even someone like Keith Jackson who and the first announced the sort of talk about takeover, he's hardly said anything about who the manager been who in talks
And
with.
if he has, he's been
So
contradicting himself every day. So
exactly. So
they
one
don't
day
know.
it's as you said, one day it's Ancelotti, one day it's
Yeah.
Gerrard, one day it's Fiore, one day it's Martin, one day it's me. I don't know, but everyone's getting linked with the job at this point, but there's none real concrete. And and the players are back for pre-season in what 2 3 weeks?
Yeah. There'll be a new manager. The manager will be announced by then. I
Aye,
think the
but we don't
man.
have we don't have any signings yet either. So
Yeah.
unless we make stupid amount of signings in 2 3 weeks, then whoever let's say it's Ancelotti for talking sake, Ancelotti's going to go in with actually a worse squad at the end of the last season because Czerny's not away and we haven't signed anyone.
Jack, what like I'm not going to ask you like who. Well, I will ask you like who do you think the manager will be, right? Because I do think it will be Ancelotti, but what does a new manager need to do? Because it's easy enough coming in and saying, right, we want Rangers fans want a style of play, want somebody first and foremost who is going to win games of football and win trophies, because that is not Rangers managers haven't done that, right? Even Gerrard, despite winning 55, didn't win. Like, do you know what I mean? Yes, there was building blocks. He won one trophy, and I'm not saying like I'm not holding that against him the way other people will, but Rangers fans are starved for success. Rangers fans are starved from competing in every front. And at the moment, what I'm looking for in a Rangers manager is someone who's going to come in, get the fans excited on the park, because that to me has been missing as well. But somebody who can win and bring that dynamic. But I don't think we're looking for a manager. I don't think this structure is based on a manager. It seems to be a head coach.
Yeah, that seems to be the way that they're kind of thinking about it. And the Ancelotti rumour, as you say, is the only concrete kind of one that you've got where you can kind of hang your hat on it. So I think it will be him as well. I think there's been too much. I think the club would have probably came out as soon as they saw that and completely just told like the Rangers review and stuff like that, like, aye, this isn't happening. But it seems to be that they're running with it. It seems to be. I would like to think in the next week or so we'll have the actual announcement, because as you say, it is getting closer to that start date for pre-season again, where players will need to have that coach in place. And I think for me, what I'm looking for from it is just a guy. Of course, Ancelotti, if it is him, he's got wealth of experience for some elite clubs. He's worked under one of the best managers of the modern era, really, in football. He's won Everton. So for somebody to come in that's worked with that, by all accounts, I've read some stuff that he might have been doing more at Real this season than Carlo was as well. So that's of course an interesting sign. The links that he'll then bring with that is exciting. The staff that he'll probably bring in with him as well, because you're saying he'll be the head coach, he'll be the guy that will kind of get us playing and stuff, but there'll be a vast team surrounding him that'll do a lot of other jobs as well. So I think it's the way that modern clubs seem to kind of be going, maybe even like a Bayer Leverkusen or something like that, where they got Alonso in, just put that guy in there, get him as a head coach and surround him with some high level coaches around him. And I think it's probably the right way Rangers can go. I think any appointment's a risk, really. If they had to go and get a well proven guy like a Marco Rosa or something, he's managed some big teams, he's won some trophies and stuff. He comes in, everybody thinks, right, he's just going to do the same here. He fails. Ancelotti comes in, it's a risk because he's not been a manager, of course. So I think no matter who Rangers appoint, as Scott said, people are going to complain. But I definitely think Ancelotti is the one that we've obviously all done a lot more research into, and I think he would be the one that would get the fans really excited.
Scott, Jack brings up a really interesting point there when he says get the fans excited. And at the moment, it seems to be the two names hotly tipped are either Ancelotti or Russell Martin. Russell Martin's an interesting one because, yes, he was an ex-player, wasn't a very good one, which I think puts him in the back foot with fans instantly if he gets the job. But what is also, Russell Martin's earned a lot of rave reviews, right? And for those who don't know, me and Scott do an English Premier League show where we have been we've praised Russell Martin on occasion, but not all the time, because the thing with Russell Martin is, and Pep Guardiola said this, yes, his team is exciting, but he has played that way all the time. He's played the way he's set out, and that's mostly the reason why Southampton are probably on track to be, well, were on track to a degree to being one of the worst Premier League teams ever, because he wouldn't adapt and eventually cost him his job. To me, Ancelotti is like that complete break that we're talking about, where he's not an ex-player, doesn't have this record elsewhere. Like, I thought when Brian Prisk was mentioned, I was like, Dutch football, I look at Prisk, didn't do well at Feyenoord. And that's a big club, and that to me would put him in a bit of pressure as well. So to me, like, if you're saying between Ancelotti and Martin is not the person I would be looking at just now. I don't think if Martin had a difficult start without the Champions League, I don't think he would get the time with the fans. Whereas if Ancelotti comes in and you saw some glimpses of some sort of progress of what he was doing, you would see a lot. Like, I think a lot more fans would be more forgiving to Ancelotti. And to me, like, if you're saying between Ancelotti and Martin, I'm heading Ancelotti's way, and massively, to be honest.
Yeah, I think between the two, if it is between Ancelotti and Russell Martin, I think it's Ancelotti every day of the week. I think this is sort of a new era, as what we keep saying. I feel like if you want a figurehead at the top of this new era, I think I would rather have someone like Ancelotti than someone like Russell Martin in terms of like football and like this is a face to be the face of the new era type thing. And also, Russell Martin is, Russell Martin is a very good English Championship manager. And to me, we need better than that. And that's purely off the basis of, if football's a very simple game, if you look very simply, we need a better manager that, or someone who's better or at the same level as Brendan Rodgers. If we want to win the league, it's pretty simple in my opinion. And I think, and we know for a fact, Russell Martin is not a similar level to Brendan Rodgers. But Ancelotti, there is a question mark there. He might be, he might not be, but he might be, and that excites me more. Looking to positive, if you look at positively, he might be a similar level manager. He might be a better manager than Brendan Rodgers. I think it's pretty factual. Russell Martin is pretty
Mhm.
nowhere near the level of Brendan Rodgers, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can see that angle. And Jack, some of the other names mentioned, like obviously Steven Gerrard was kind of mentioned from the start, and there seemed to be strong vibes that it was going to be Steven Gerrard. Now that looks to be absolutely done by the sounds of it. Like he's not going to be the manager. We did hear for a wee while that Rangers did speak to Will Still, and I think he had his heart set on Southampton. I don't think that was ever realistic. Another name that interestingly came up was Francesco Farioli, who, if you remember, was told from what a lot of people were told was down to the last two with Michael Beale, with the idea he would be a future Rangers manager. Now, since he was told that, he's taken Nice and done a really good job there. He then went to Ajax, and say what you want about how he didn't win the title, he really progressed them and has moved on. I don't think that was ever realistic either, to be honest. Like, to me, Ancelotti has been the only one where I've been like, yeah, that seems to be the kind of direction. That seems to be not going away. Even when the chat was about Brazil, like he was going with his dad to Brazil, the next day it was in kind of Spanish media that he could still go to Rangers. And that to me says he might be with his dad for a bit, but he seems to be a real strong contender for this job. And that, as we say, isn't going away. And he just ticks a lot more boxes for me than Martin does.
Yeah, I think Russell Martin is everybody's kind of said so far is because he's been at the club, because he's been a poor player, because of all those factors, he wouldn't get the joy with the fans that Ancelotti probably would. I could see Ancelotti if we do appoint him, say disaster strikes, we get put out in the Champions League playoff or something like that. We don't get the Champions League football. I think if that is Russell Martin, it's like, right, we need to get rid of this guy. We're not going anywhere. But if it's Ancelotti, I think there is that bit of leeway there. And he just has a more exciting name for me. Francesco Farioli as well is one of those names I would be excited by as well.
He would have been the one. See if it was like serious, like Farioli's strongly linked with this, I would have been absolutely. But I
Yeah,
just don't think it's on. Like I
yeah, I
really
don't
don't.
think so. I've seen rumours of him maybe going to Fiorentina as well. So I think he is a really good coach and somebody obviously we've considered in the past and somebody that has progressed Nice and Ajax over just a couple of years. So he would have been ideal really for us at the moment. But yeah, Ancelotti for me seems to be the one that's ticking the most boxes. Um, it's just to me now, I want to see some proper information on when it's going to happen because it just feels like we've been talking
Yeah,
for forever about the guy and just want to kind of see him in the post now.
yeah. The other name that was strongly linked that I really liked the idea of was Danny Rowe. And Scott, you know I love Danny Rowe,
Aye,
and that certainly didn't seem realistic either. But like, are we all in agreement that we think it's going to be Ancelotti?
yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Aye.
Yeah, I think it is as well. And if we're going by that theory, which hopefully it is because I think we'd be more excited about Ancelotti. What does his squad look like next season? Because for how many seasons in a row are we going to have a rebuild? Are we going to see 11 players in, 11 players out? Like, we can't keep doing this. And I don't think, I would be astonished if we're talking about this time next season. But Scott is one of those players that could be on the way out is Nico Raskin. And if he is not a part of Rangers next season, how much do we need to just laud the improvement in him this year? Because he's been like the
Yeah.
standards he's improved to have been ridiculous this year.
Ever since that Spurs game, We
Yeah,
began December just for kind of, it was that Spurs game. Everyone sat up and went, "The boy's a player."
yeah.
I always liked him when he first came in. I was a big fan of his. When Beale signed him, would be saying him and Cantwell. I think Cantwell got more reviews because of sort of personality it was,
Hmm.
but Raskin was the one for me. I watched him like, you're my kind of footballer. He does the basics things, but he does the basic, but he does the basics so well. He wins the ball back, passes it forward, and passes it to good players. And that's kind of what you need. That's kind of what you want from your six hybrid eight. And yeah, like the fee going about for me north of £15 million I would take for Nico Raskin. Anything less than that, I would question it.
Jack, what is it about Raskin that's kind of changed this season? Because I think we've always seen, I think the energy's always been there. I don't think we've ever doubted that. But as Scott mentioned, his passing range, which I think can still improve. I think his level of passing's a lot better than it was when he first came in. And one really important characteristic for me, and if he doesn't get sold, I won't be disappointed at all. He looks to be that kind of leader that, certainly in that midfield area that Rangers have not had probably since Barry Ferguson. Like,
Yeah,
he looks if he can get to that, like in terms of I'm going to lead this side, I'm going to take Rangers. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to take this game. Like, do you know what I mean? The Celtic game
hmm
at New Year, he was majestic in that role. Just the way he led that game. Do you know what I mean? His pressing's good. He just looks to me to be tons above what his original standards was. And this is a guy at the start of the season where I don't think anybody would have been surprised if Clermont didn't really like want him involved.
No,
Like, it wasn't really anywhere near the team. And now you look at him and he's been superb, and he's added goals to his game as well. Do you know what I mean? He's scoring headers. Imagine saying that this time last year. Like,
yeah,
it's improvement, and that's what Rangers need 6 or 7 players to be like.
yeah. I think Raskin's been just one of the biggest success stories of the past couple of years because, of course, comes in. We're looking for at that time, of course, players that are maybe running out of contract. We can get them in. Got them in for a relatively low fee. Kind of bedded in well with Cantwell, and then the next season after that didn't get too much game time again. Going into even the start of last season, there wasn't featured too much. It was more Barron and Diomande that were the two to go with. So for him to force his way into the team and be the best player, like hands down last season, there you can't really have replaced him at any point. I think Barry Ferguson was obviously a big part in his development as well. I think you're going to naturally learn off somebody like that had those standards in the way he was at Rangers. So I think that's definitely bled onto Raskin a wee bit, but I think when you see him play, he's got the right attitude towards being a Rangers player. He's just got the application and the effort. I think that most people want to see for large numbers of the squad. And I think we've had more talented players over the years, like your Kents and Tillmans and Seema and stuff like that. But I think he just epitomises everything that you would want a Rangers player to be. He's got the talent, and he's obviously got the guy to play for Rangers. And I think he had three out of the four. Old Firm games in the league, he was like man of the match in all of
Yeah,
them. And towards the end of the season there, most games at Ibrox that I was at anyway, he was the man of the match of the game as well. So he's key to how we play. He's definitely took his game up leaps and bounds, and he's became a proper fan favourite. For me at the moment, his contract situation as well, like we have to be talking about that. Is he going to extend DA and
Belgian
go and
squad
make him
as
the
well. Belgian
captain?
squad as
So
well is
aye,
quite important. Like, the
and
fact
he was
he's
great for Belgium as well.
really well thought of at Belgium is a massive thing. Like, could be good for Rangers, Jack,
yeah,
I think.
and I think that's probably why Rangers will maybe cash in on him while they can. His stock is extremely high. He's been fantastic in Europe against Spurs, against big teams in the competition. Um, he's got obviously in the Belgium team now, so I think that it's only going one way, and I think it's Raskin's going to receive a lot of buzz and attention this season. I think it will be on the way out, unfortunately, but I think that's exactly the way Rangers need to be with this new ownership. Is they
Yeah.
have to see that interest, and they have to then, and as unfortunate as it is to lose a fantastic player like him, we thank him for his services. We get the cash in, and we try and get the next Raskin.
Yeah, absolutely. Scott, I don't think there's going to be many names slip off the tongue here, but based on the squad of last season, who could be part of a Rangers squad going in a better direction?
Other than Raskin, probably Egerman is one I look at. I mean, Egerman, like the consistency hasn't been there, but you expect that because he's
Yes.
still young.
Yeah.
But there's definitely been flashes of like the goal against Celtic. Obviously, that's his moment. If you think that Egerman last season, you think late one at Celtic Park, the finish
Hmm.
sort of on the volleys, it's so composed. Someone that young to do that on such an occasion. He's probably the only one I look at and go, I'd be disappointed if he left. Everyone else, like you could you could maybe keep. Like I thought the glimpses of Insiala, especially on the ball, I really like looking at Insiala on the ball. I think there's something there with him. But apart from that, like there's no real. I wouldn't be devastated if anyone left.
Jack, we've got players obviously like Diamande, Suter, Sterling. Like, there's a few players there. Jeff, Diagaman can probably be a part of a good Rangers side, but to me, there's not much else. Like, again, we'll get into players that need to be let go, but any of those kind of five that I mentioned, you'd be like, oh, we absolutely can't have him.
I don't think so. That's maybe the biggest problem at Rangers. There's not one player where I look at them, and obviously we've had players over the years like Morelos. You were like desperate to keep a hold of him at any possible opportunity. I don't feel that there is anybody like that at the moment. I think we've got good, talented players, players that have maybe on the cusp of being good. Maybe just need more game time. They need more time in the shot. They need a manager that maybe believes in them a bit more to kind of see their full potential. But I think if I had to briefly go over some of the players off the top of my head, of course Raskin, Diomande, Igaman. I don't mind Dujon Sterling for a rotational guy, but he's again not fit and available enough, which is the annoying thing with him. Suter, I think, is an able deputy. I don't think any of the goalkeepers, apart from maybe Liam Kelly's fine to kind of keep around.
Okay.
Aye, that's probably where I'm at with it. Cortez, of course, the jury's still out. We'll see, but there's not many players where I would hold my hands up and be like, kind of hands off, not for sale. I think anybody at this summer has got a price tag on their head.
Scott, Jack mentions obviously the goalkeeping situation. One player I wanted to touch on these both was Jack Butland, because I think this time last season would have been like, I think he was the guy you're thinking, right, if Rangers do sell a player for big money, it's probably going to be him. And his regression has been quite apparent. He's been making a lot of mistakes that you wouldn't have seen last season. Can that be, can you find something in there to go, right, he's had a bad season, his confidence has been shot, let's give him another go, or the Rangers need to move on from Jack Butland?
I think there's a few ways you can look at Jack Butland, especially last season. I think there's so I see some folks say like the back line in front of him is very inconsistent.
Yeah.
But Suter's the main one, but Suter's partners sort of rotated through the season. But it's Inciala, Balogun, whoever else, Proper, etc. But then I look at that and think it doesn't. You should still be like the one against Hibs, the
Yeah.
first one which goes under him. Whether it's me and you in front of him at centre half, like the ball still shouldn't be going to him. So I'm kind of. I think if we get an offer for Butland, I would consider it. But we need so many players this summer that if Butland is our first choice keeper next season, I wouldn't be completely devastated compared to. Don't want to single the guy out here, but it's never compared to Tav being a first choice right back. I cannot go next season with James Tavernier as a first choice
Yeah,
right back,
we'll
but
touch
I
on
can
that as well.
accept the idea of Jack Butland being a first choice keeper.
Yeah. And Jack, I think that's an interesting point where I don't think like Jack Butland's in that kind of Tavernier bracket of, right, he has like Tavernier for me, like we'll touch on it in a minute, but for me, Tavernier can't be a part of Rangers next season. Like, but Jack Butland is still, I mean, there was even kind of, he's still only 32, do you know what I mean? And that's not old. So is it a case of, as Scott says, give him another go? If it doesn't work, Kelly can come in, or is it this isn't going to get any better? Let's just part company and go and get a 22-year-old goalkeeper who, as we know, we've seen in the past, certainly across the city, it's very hard to find them and very hard that they hit the ground running immediately.
Yeah, I think it's always a difficult one as soon as you're looking for a new goalkeeper, especially with Rangers being kind of blessed with goalkeepers over the years. I think Butland did a good year, of course, in his first season. Probably a standout player, as you say. We're maybe going to get offers in from him. Nothing really materialised. He never got into the England squad. It was kind of like a refresh and a restart for Butland this season to see if he could go again. And I think he was at the forefront of a lot of poor goals that we lost, a lot of poor distribution at times. But again, you need to look at the back line in front of him at times that don't really fill you with confidence anyway. So I can't imagine how he feels being the goalie in that situation as well. So I think just listening to Jack Butland speak on podcasts and interviews with the club and whatever else, I think he's got exactly what the mentality that's needed at Rangers. I think he speaks really well. I think he's really knowledgeable when he speaks, and I think he's a guy that's desperate to win trophies and silverware at Rangers. Whether he is the guy that, say, an Ancelotti comes in and he wants to play out for the back, and I don't think he's that guy. So I think he might try and go in a different direction. But like Scott says, I wouldn't be too kind of upset if he's the number one next season, because I still think he has got a good goalkeeper and he has got it in him. I think maybe just collectively for everybody, apart from a few last season, it was a poor season for Butland. But I think it's all dependent on how the manager really wants his team to function.
Scott, another player I wanted to touch on is a player who I am running out of ways to try and analyse is Cyril Dessers. Right? I honestly, I think Sigmund Freud could struggle with this guy because I am not going to knock a player who scored 29 goals for Rangers this season. Right? That's a very good season for in terms of recent seasons. Right? And top goal scorer in the league. That's a good achievement and a good season. But there is also a strong part of me who thinks Cyril Dessers is not the long-term answer because, yes, he scored 29 goals, but if you look at the chances he's had, you look at some of the things that he does, there's times where you can watch Cyril Dessers and think, you are way too good to be playing for Rangers Football Club. But there's the same game within 90 seconds of it, you could look at him and think, how on earth are you at Rangers Football Club? It's just that sort of enigma is a weird enigma to assess, but he seems eager to stay. I am very interested to see what happens with Dessers.
I don't know what I'd do with Dessers. What I will say is, I've always gone back to two games when it comes to Cyril Dessers. The first one, Ross County away 2 seasons ago. We're one. The game we get beat 3-2. We're 1-0 up. Dessers has three sitters. He misses them all. Ross County go 3-1 up. If he scores one of them, we go 2-0 up. We win that game and potentially win the league. Because I go back to the Ross County game as the reason we lost that league that season. And if we had, I'm not saying we sign him. I'm just gonna chuck a name at that. If we had Lon Shankland, taking those chances, I reckon Lon Shankland scores at least one of them. For example, just a more natural goal scorer than Cyril Dessers. But again, so we always come back to he's the league's top goal scorer.
Mm-hmm.
Like everyone whacked lyrical about Maida at the other end of the city. You had Dessers got more goals than him this season.
Yep.
Dessers had some. I mean, Fenerbahce away was unbelievable.
Yep.
But then I remember Bilbao away was horrific. So I even though he should have won a penalty, but let's not get into that. I don't know what I'd do with Cyril Dessers. I think if we got an offer for him, I think I'd sell him. Because I don't think you win the league with Cyril Dessers your first choice centre forward. And I also think he's probably on too much money to be a second choice centre forward. So if you look at it like that, I think I would sell him. But he's probably in the Butland camp of if he didn't leave, I wouldn't be devastated.
And Jack, I think Scott's kind of hit the nail on the head as far as I'm concerned. I don't want to be looking next season going Cyril Dessers is the best option available. But if he's like third choice, I'm not overly against it. It just to me, Rangers need better. But I can see an angle. Scott mentioned, I think it was £4.5 million. Right.
Something like that.
That's a lot of money. And you can argue, like, he scored, what, 51 goals? He's averaging a goal every 2 games, near enough, right? So it's not bad. But there's games you watch him thinking you should have 5 or 6 goals. And I'm
Yeah.
not joking there. Where are you with him?
Well, I think as a whole, you could do multiple podcasts just speaking about Dessler's time at Rangers on their own, right? I think Dessler's time at Rangers will go into the same kind of category as if the debate if Tavernier's ever been a good Rangers captain. It's like one of those where you can't really describe it or explain it enough, and I think it goes into that kind of category. I think Dessler's he's a weird player because, like you mentioned, he should have scored about 5 or 6 a game. That Dundee game away from home, where we ended up winning the game after being, I think, 3-1 down as well, winning at full 3. He scores the winner, but he misses about 12 chances on goal, and you're thinking, right, what is this guy all about? But then he pops up with the winner, and it's like, right, so how do you even begin to explain that? I think for the return, 4.5 million we paid for him, obviously coming for the Serie A as well. He's done all right. I think in the teams that he's been involved in as well, there's not been any of the greatest Rangers teams all time. They've had a couple of decent players in and about them. There's been a lot of transition and change while he's been here as well. So I think for him to still be scoring as many goals as he has, of course, he gets that reward of being the top goal scorer this season. Pops up with a goal in, I think, every game of the split as well. He's a difficult one to really describe. I think, as Scott said as well, that Bilbao game, both legs, I thought he was really poor. The game previously, Fenerbahce away, I thought he was good. So it's one of those. I don't think he can be the guy next season, but something you can't really hold against him is he's been available every single time this season. I don't think he's been injured at all, and even 2 seasons. So he's got that going for him. You've got the guaranteed fact that he will score goals in Scotland. It's just he needs to brush up on how he finishes chances and how he plays. Because on the eye at times he's not a bad player. It's just the decision making at times is shocking. Again, I wouldn't be best pleased to see him stay and be the guy for next season. But again, I wouldn't fault the club for saying, right, this guy scored 30 goals. We'll keep him for next season. So I think he'll be in demand though. Similarly, Raskin, he's scored goals for Nigeria in their games over the past week there as well. So I think he'll be a player that clubs will pay attention to, and again, he probably could get us a decent bit of money in as well.
Scott, before the kind of final point before we wrap up, like we're talking about like the summer, how it needs to be a complete clean break. There are a lot of players at the club who are not capable, and I don't want to be disrespectful of James Tavernier, but I feel last summer, he should have been sold. He should have sold. And whether it was we don't want to sell Tavernier and Goldson at the same time, we don't want to completely change that, whether it was we can't get a right back, I don't know what it was. But I think with the defence this season, and I've said this for years, the defence is calamitous. Like there's a lot that defence. If I think Suter will stay. I think Jeffrey will probably stay. I think every other defender, apart from Inciala, I think going out and loan to a Premiership club, get a bit more experience for the Scottish game wouldn't be a bad thing for him. But everyone else, to me, it needs. I want to see in this next season for the first game, set the first game of the Champions League, an entirely new back four because it needs it.
I always said for years, like I was talking to my pal just before I come on here. Our last good centre half we signed was Hollander. That was 6 years ago.
Yep.
I mean, I think you know me. I'm far from John Suter's biggest fan. I think he has got a good game every 5, and I think you need better. We need better than that, Rangers. I think Yilmaz will be away anyway. I think there's talk today's about Besiktas.
Yeah.
He's in talks with Besiktas. So I think we might get a bit of money for him, to be fair. Jeff Steele will probably stay. He cannot be first choice left back. That cannot happen. If I look at Dujon Sterling and he is far too injury prone. People talk how injury prone Dujon Sterling is compared to people talk about Dill being injury prone, Cortez. Sterling's right up there with injuries for me.
Yes, I agree with that.
He's done his Achilles out till December, I think.
I agree with that, but I'm also like, if he is fit, he's a player who you can put in any position. So I'm
Yeah.
not against having him there. It's just I wouldn't like, as you say,
I wouldn't rely. You can't rely on
you
Douglas
cannot rely
Stelling.
on him. Yeah, and Yilmaz is in the same bracket, by the way. Yilmaz, you can't go. We're going to have Jeff Day and Yilmaz next season. Yilmaz's injury record is as bad as MD's, so you can't
Yeah.
rely on him. So for me, if there's an offer comes, let's just move him on.
Aye, and then you get Tav. Tav's the mate. I would be absolutely stunned if Tav is not a Rangers player. I think Tav is here for the season, but he cannot start. He cannot be a first choice right back. Have him in about the squad. Just have him being even centre half cover because I thought he was better at centre half last season. He
Yeah, I'd
was at
agree
right
with that.
back.
Yeah,
I thought he'd done a job at centre half games that he kind of had to makeshift back for. Thought he'd done all right, but yeah, he cannot be a first choice right back.
no.
I don't. Ancelotti go to Spain. I've seen the Nathan Pallis's name will never not be linked to Rangers. I don't
His
think.
injury record's terrible as well, though.
Aye,
Like,
horrific. Did he not break his leg at Everton after two
yeah,
weeks or something? Yeah. And even like David Moyes looked at him and looked at 40-year-old Ashley Young, 40-year-old Seamus Coleman, and I'll play the two ahead of him. So he can't be must be doing something wrong at Everton. So yeah, we need a tanner back, but I'm not going to say names because we'll probably scout. There's probably name. The only name I've seen is Penrice for Hearts at left back. I wouldn't be against
save
that.
that for the transfer show we'll do in July.
Right,
We'll
cool. I
save
would put
that
that
for
in.
that.
Sorted.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I'd agree, Jack. I think the other thing as well, Tavernier. The problem with Tavernier isn't his age. Do you know what I mean? He's still what 32. He's but
Well,
he
I
has
think it's
been.
about. I think
I don't know, 32, 33, whatever age he is. The problem with Tavernier is, though, and for the reasons we've mentioned about the kind of lack of cover, he has been played into the ground to the point where he's 33. He is
yeah,
not. His legs are completely not. His legs are completely gone right because they're not. But the big thing with Tavernier was is that he's not the best defender, but he is a tremendous asset going forward. He's losing that now, so to me, you can't. If he's losing the one thing that made him the no brainer first choice right back, it's not really worth keeping him. In my opinion, and that sounds disrespectful because he's been here what 11 years and he's been a
this
mat.
10th year.
Yeah, 10. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I don't think there's a coincidence that it's probably been like the 10 year get to the 10 years and we'll give you something kind of thing. I think that's probably been a big motivation for it. But to me, James Tavernier 3 years ago and James Tavernier now, they're not the same player. And when that happens, you need to move on.
Yeah, I think there was the talk obviously last summer where I think it was Besiktas. I think it was some Turkish teams that were in, and from nothing ever materialised. Um, of course, he's in his last year now. I think for me, looking at like the onset and the outlook of the club now, we've got new owners, we've got a new direction, we'll have a new coach. If we still have the same captain, the same guy that's been here, I just don't feel that progression
Yeah.
is properly happening. So I would like for Tavernier probably to move on, even if he isn't the captain, if he's just involved in the squad, as you say, maybe to be a kind of rotational option in the back four. But I think Tavernier probably believes in himself a bit more that he can still start games. So I think he might look for a way out of the club. And as you say, he's been ran into the ground. He's been a good servant for the club. I mean, he's been available out with maybe a couple of injuries over 10 years. So I can't fault his commitment to the club, but it's always going to be, as I said with Dessers, one of those debates, being like, why was he a good captain? Was he not? All those things with the trophies stuff. So I think for him, he has to move on, and we really need to probably start going in a new direction because I feel he's been involved in that many resets where this has to be his last one now.
Final point, guys, before we wrap up. When we're back in August, what are we hoping for? What are we hoping the summer is, Scott? Because we know it's going to be exciting because we're going to get rumours every day. We're going to get a new manager announcement soon. We're going to get like the EGM. I think will confirm like what the club kind of structure is going to be and things like that. When we're in August, what do we want? Like, I'm not going to ask you how many players and things like that. Just what would make Rangers a credible threat to Celtic in the summer?
But I think the main one that we haven't had in a while is sign our first choice targets. So look at last summer. I can't remember the names off the top of my head. But if you look at the list of players, I think we end up getting a third and fourth choice for every position.
Joan Jordan, Jose Cordoba. Who was a
Aye,
striker? Who was
who
a
was the boy
striker?
at Burnley? Hannibal Maidbury. We got
Yeah,
to
Aye,
we
he
were
was
looking at
that's
Man
linked
right.
as
United there,
Yeah,
well.
looking at him.
yeah.
There was another centre forward, Raman something.
Raman Nani.
Ramanani. Yeah, that's right.
Aye, we're like a bunch, like they were all first choice, and then we ended up with third and fourth choice in every
Yeah,
position. So we can at least get, let's say off top, say we need to sign 9 players. If we can get, if 6 of those 9 can be the first choice target in that position, then I think that's exciting to me because because then we can't have any blame against Ancelotti and the board and everyone else. Can he say, "Oh, we tried for him but failed"? We got our first choice, and that would excite me, and also because the scouting department we've put in 2 boys for Everton, Everton for Leeds, and Red Bull and everything else. The scouting department's there, and if we can get a first choice targets with that scouting department, that excites me.
Jack, go along with that.
Yeah, I think a bit of the same. I think we need to obviously start seeing some possibilities of rumours of players that will be in the ballpark of signing. Of course, Luka Modric has been one of those so far, which
I
just
want
seems like a
nothing
bit of a
more.
pipe dream.
If he
It
signs,
would be
just plays
great,
two
but
games, I'll die happy, man.
it'd be fantastic to see it happen. But I think that's probably what this summer's going to be. It's going to be like Modric's and guys like that will be
Jamie
linked with
Vardy.
the papers. Aye, Jamie Vardy's been one. I think Ronaldo even at a point as well. So I think we'll need a lot of turnover. I think players are going to be up for sale. I think there's going to be players that will have to get out the door, and hopefully that shouldn't be as hard as it was last summer with a bit of structure with the financial stuff. So, for me, I'm just looking for. Even when Gerrard came in, he built for the back first. He built 2 proper good centre halves. He got reliable players in like McGregor and Arfield and stuff like that. I'm not saying we go in that direction, but maybe just start with the core of the squad and then let everyone else kind of take place as we see it fit. But I think there'll be a lot. It'll be manic all the time, and I think that's what we want to see players rumoured. I think even last summer it was really quiet at times where other rumours. So I don't think we'll be too short for them this summer, hopefully, and there'll be a lot of change and turnover. So definitely, really exciting.
Guys, I want to thank you very much for coming on and discussing this. We'll be back next season to discuss the Rangers in a lot more more rapid form. We'll be back a lot more often than we have been. First of all, Scott Young, thanks as always, mate.
Nah, it's always a pleasure, mate. Cheers.
And to Jack Hamilton, thank you very much.
Cheers for 7 on again.
Brilliant, folks. If you want some more Rangers content over the summer, subscribe to our follow us on social media. We'll obviously have our Patreon as well. We're doing a lot more kind of historical stuff. Breaking news podcast could be about if we get a managerial announcement. Stay tuned for that. We'll see you all soon, folks. Thank you very much for tuning in.